Hey Chad, how you doing?
Good. What's going on?
Good, not much. Thanks for
There's,
setting this up for us.
yeah, of course. There's Tyler's there too. Great. Cool.
Cool,
Wow. Thank
awesome.
you.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, I think we got like one more coming in here, but this is about who we got for today. So thank you guys
Great.
so much for doing this for us, as I've already said a few times now. Chad, I've met you before, so nice seeing you again. Tyler, very nice to meet you, and thank you guys both for doing this interview with us. Would you guys
Yeah.
mind just introducing yourselves for the probably only two people in this room who don't know who you guys are and what you guys do?
My name is Chad Villella. I am the producing side of Radio Silence. And my name is Tyler Gillett, and I'm one of two directors at Radio Silence.
Yeah, and for those of you guys who saw the like PR post that we put out, Matt's not able to be here tonight, but he is the other director who's a part of Radio Silence, which is the group that these guys make up. Would you two mind telling us a little bit about your backgrounds and what you guys did in like high school and college to kind of prepare yourselves in a career in filmmaking? Chad, I know we talked last year, so some of these questions are going to sound familiar to you, but I know a little bit about your interesting background. But if you guys both wouldn't kind of mind giving like a rundown of what you guys did to get yourselves in the positions you're at.
That's a great question. I'll let Tyler kick it off because I'm very interested in hearing his story. Yeah, so I mean, I loved movies as a kid. I grew up, was obsessed with movies. Was introduced to the horror genre early through my dad. I mean, my first horror movies, Terminator, Predator, Alien, things like that, RoboCop, and just always had a real fondness for movies, and really got into skateboarding in high school, and ended up behind the camera. Shot a lot of photos and videos, and sort of fell in love with media through that subculture, and that just grew and grew and grew. Spent summer school at USC when I was in high school, and learned some. You took like basic screenwriting, and just continued to fall in love with it. And then after high school, went to the U of A, and knew that I wanted to do something in film. Had an aptitude for photography because it'd been a hobby of mine for so many years. So ended up really studying photography to start. And then about 2 years into, a year and a half into my education at the U of A, to also give a shot at film. And so ended up getting to, double majoring, got a degree in film and a degree in photography. And those things sort of were always overlapping for me. After college, I moved to LA and worked as a DP for many years, behind the camera, a camera operator for many years. This is, of course, after I was an assistant, on multiple desks. But I was always just sort of knew that I'd be involved in movies in some way, and paid my way for a while as a technician, as a cinematographer, and started directing with Chad and Matt. Yeah, I mean, what, going on 15 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good story. Max, I know we talked last year briefly, but just for me, I grew up in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. So I think some of you might know where that is. And there wasn't much to do. So we ended up making a lot of like movies on our own, and it would be me and just a couple friends. We'd go out with a camera, and we would just make our own shorts, and go from there. And even in high school and college, there are a lot of times I didn't want to write a paper or something like that, and I would just be like, "Could I make a movie instead?" And we would go out and script that and figure it out and use that as a presentation. And then in college, I also got into acting, so I came into this all through the acting side of everything. I did theater at Mercyhurst College. I did theater in Pittsburgh, at the public, and the small theater on the west side, or sorry, in the south side where I used to work. I used to bartend at Mario's in the south side. Um, and from there, did radio commercials and a couple other things, and decided to move to Los Angeles. And then when I did move to Los Angeles, I went to an acting class on my first day in LA, and I sat down in the back row because I was a little nervous, and sat down next to Matt. And Matt and I were like looking at like what it takes to be an actor in LA, and just thinking about, would that satisfy all of our creative urges and everything that we want to do, and the fact that we absolutely hated auditioning. So we were like, let's just make our own things, because nobody's going to write better for us than ourselves. So we started just jumping in and making our own things. And it used to be a trio of us called Chad, Matt, and Rob. And there would only be two people on camera because the other person was holding it. And you kind of just learn from the ground up. And then shortly thereafter, we got together with Tyler, and Matt worked with Tyler at New Line. And it was one weekend. We wanted to make a interactive adventure where we would make several different shorts, and they would be connected, and you like a choose your own adventure story, and you could go forward. And then we've been working together ever since then. And then luckily, like, some of our shorts got picked up by some other producers, and we got asked to be a part of this one film collective that we didn't know what it was going to be at the time, but we just said yes to it. And it was us, Adam Wingard, David Bruckner, Joe Swanberg, Glenn McQuaid, and it turned out to be VHS. And VHS got into Sundance. And then from there on, we were like, all right, I guess this is what we do now. We get to, for our adult jobs, we get to tell stories and make cool projects and continue down that path.
And I know from there it kind of spiraled to where you guys are now, and I want to touch on that in a little bit. But back to kind of when you guys were doing the Chad, Matt, and Rob stuff and doing your Pranks Gone Wrong and choose your own adventure videos and stuff, what sort of like equipment were you guys using? Were you guys writing out full scripts, or was it a lot of improv stuff? And what were like your favorite genres to shoot when you guys were doing all that stuff?
Yeah, no, I mean, we had treatments more or less than scripts, because we were doing a lot of improv. There would be beats we would have to hit, and you'd have to find the best way to get there. And there would be lines, and we would be directing each other and coaching each other as we were going through it. And then we started an action adventure comedy, and just was having a blast with that. And then our comedy started to go a little bit dark, which kind of just was a natural segue into horror. And we were able to do a little bit of horror as well, and combining prank videos with horror. And I think that's like where our initial like desire to subvert tropes and to like learn tropes, learn rules of each genre, and then find ways to flip it on its head a little bit. And so you're not going to get exactly what you were expecting out of something. And there were those Prank Gone Wrong videos that would just be something that you would think you would be watching a prank gone wrong, but then there would be an actual element of horror that would go into that as well. Yeah, no, we'd shoot on anything we had at the time. Matt had a high 8 camera, and we were shooting on that. And then when Tyler joined, we were shooting on some better equipment and had better cinematography, and we were able to add a visual effects element from Justin Martinez, who came on board as well. And we were able to build everything out from there.
Tyler, I think you're muted. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would just add, I think one of the things that really kept us creating was, I think, working within the limitations that we had, right? I think a lot of people, and I know that, I certainly had this fear when I first started making stuff, that if a set didn't look a certain way, if you didn't have a certain kind of camera and a certain size of a crew, that for some reason what you were making wasn't legitimate in some way. And I think that one of the early things that we discovered was that all that shit doesn't matter. Like, you demystify what you think the thing is supposed to be, and you use what you have. And so for us, it was really just about, and look, we're fortunate to live in LA, where we're a 30-minute, 45-minute drive from some of the most incredible locations in the world. And so we leaned on the things that we knew we had access to, and that we had access to cheap, to tell stories at a much larger scale than I think we even at the time thought that we could. And I think that ambition was just always something that we were trying to push. We always, every project after the last one, we would try to risk something bigger. We would try to achieve something bigger. We would try to use visual effects in some new way. And as we started, shooting more and more, the camera equipment would upgrade, and our skill set would upgrade. And and eventually I think you sort of learn the process enough to know just how to utilize all of the things that you have, regardless of the scale.
And you guys, obviously, you kind of grew up in a very different time than right now. And the filmmaking climate has changed so much, especially with stuff like YouTube and just being able to shoot on phones. So what would be like the biggest piece of advice you guys would have for like young filmmakers and people wanting to get into that?
I mean, mine would be just to go out and do things. Like, obviously, you're not going to have the biggest budgets in the world, but you learn creativity through necessity, and you're able to build off of every skill set you gain along the way. I think doing is the best education possible. Making shorts now and making trying to make a feature film now, like, just go for it, like, try it. Maybe start with like a 2 to 3 minute thing, and then make sure you learn structure and story as well, so it could be adapted to a longer format, because you want to make sure that you have the act breaks, and you have the movements of a traditional narrative structure, no matter how long your piece is, be it 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, or 90 minutes, and just dive in that way, and learn by doing.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that I think it's one of the great things about the era we're living in is, everybody has a phone, has a camera in their pocket, and a lot of them are higher quality than any of the things that we started shooting on. But I also think the kind of challenge of the time that we're living in is, I think that we are we're inundated with more content, more media. You're right. It's easier to consume more great things in a day than it ever has been. And I think that there's a little bit of a feeling that because I watch so much, because I know so much about what's out there, that I know how to make those things. And I will just say, for our learning process, the gap between understanding what's entertaining and understanding how to make something that's entertaining is really pretty wide. And the only way you close that gap is by doing it and practicing and figuring out, like Chad said, what the rules are, and then finding ways to sort of break them and make them your own. Yeah, I think that just the demystifying the process and just not being afraid to go out and make. And you look at a filmmaker like Sean Baker, who's Florida Project, and I mean, he's Tangerine, like those movies, a lot of them shot on consumer prosumer equipment, and they're some of the most thoughtful, amazing movies out there. And so I think it's really, it's an exciting time to be making stuff, because the level of access is just so great. It's greater than it's ever been.
And so kind of going off of that, and also kind of pertaining to another question I had. So in between VHS and Ready or Not, I'm kind of curious how you guys went from that and getting into Sundance, and then getting yourselves the feature Ready or Not, and then eventually Scream. And then kind of on top of that, how do you guys feel like you're able to differentiate yourselves in amongst like all this content, like you were saying, and having so much coming out all the time?
Well, I mean, after VHS, we jumped onto our first studio movie pretty quickly after that project. And I don't think that we would do anything differently if we were presented with the same set of choices today. But we learned a lot really fast on that project, and I think we learned a lot of things that we do well. We learned a lot of things that we don't do well, and that project, honestly, I think for good reasons and bad reasons, kind of put us in director's jail for a couple of years. But it was this really, I think it was an eye-opening experience to suddenly have access to a process that I think you never dream you're going to get to have access to when you're just starting out, and to then have it not go the way that you sort of hoped it would. I think what it ultimately forced us to do was to kind of look inward at our group, at the thing that we had created, and go,
yeah,
all right, how do we want to move forward with this? Like, there was every reason for us to just kind of pack up and be like, damn, we sort of had a chance at the big game, and we lost. But instead, we just went back to basics. We started writing our own projects. We made another indie film, and I think reminded ourselves what it was that we loved about the process in general. And then, as I think, it's the second you're not focused on the thing, it kind of happens. And so as we were making Southbound, Ready or Not popped up on our radar, and we signed onto it as soon as we could because it was such an incredible script. But that one took a while to get made. It was three years, before we would end up on set shooting that movie. But it really was just, I think it's just about, we were always in it for the right reasons. I think that we always wanted to just continue to make stuff together. And at the end of the day, having that failure sort of early on in our careers, I think was really rewarding in the sense that it forced us to kind of examine what ultimately was important to us. And that really set the path that we've been on now for the last, I don't know, 10 years.
Yeah, no, and I'll just add that, I mean, failure is like 95% of the game, if not more. Like there's so many, everyone out there will say no to you. And I think that's something you just got to get used to and, get aware of. And I mean, like even like our company name is Radio Silence because when we were Chad, Matt, and Rob, when we had a little bit of success on YouTube and everything like that too, we would have a ton of meetings, around town, and people would always be like, "Hey, we'd love to work with you. Let's find something to do together." And then we'd pitch him an idea, and then we wouldn't hear from him again. So it was like an inside joke that like, "Hey, did you hear back from so and so?" We'd be like, "Nope, Radio fucking Silence." So we just wanted to keep that as a name, that would be around, that would always inspire us to be like, you're only going to do it if you do it yourself, and you only need yourself to do it. So like that's kind of the mentality that, yes, there will be failures, there will be bumps along the way, but as long as you're true to your voice and true to yourself and your own vision, then I think that's the best thing to move forward. And I think what, like, when you asked what makes us stand out a little bit too, and I know Tyler touched on this a little bit because he was talking about satisfying our own sensibilities and our collective sensibility together, and bouncing things off of each other, and making sure that every idea we have is battle tested. But I think what we really take pride in is the tone that we bring to projects like Ready or Not, like Scream 6. Like we're able to like balance that thing of like genuinely terrifying horror, and then having moments of heart and levity. So you find characters that you can relate to, that are grounded in reality, even though the circumstances that they are going through are pretty extreme. So I think that's like a bigger part of what we do, and what, how we stand out. And like we subvert the tropes that, normal horror might really lean into. We try to like find new ways to do that. And then we also like to build out the tension and live in that tension as long as we can. And then you might get a laugh at the end of that rather than, a kill. And that unexpectedness keeps people coming back and keeps them engaged in the movie for a longer amount of time.
Yeah, and those sensibilities you guys had described building kind of over the course of your time on YouTube, but also, making the movies, and through the failures that you guys had kind of had, or the lessons that you guys had learned through that, you did land in directing and producing Scream, which is one of the biggest horror franchises of all time. And you picked it up about 10 years after the fourth one, and you're kind of filling in the shoes of Wes Craven. So like, how were you guys able to bring what you guys had developed and kind of fill in those shoes, but also create a new cast of characters, and now this whole new legacy for the film, and kind of spinning off a franchise with an entirely new cast from the original?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in the fortunate position that as fans of Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson, the original 4 Scream movies were so formative to us. They were, in so many ways, I think, the blueprint for like what we love to do. And we were influenced to such a significant degree by those movies, that I think the tone that we love that kind of comes naturally to us is really, in so many ways, just aped directly from those films. So in a weird way, it feels like kind of come home. Like Scream is a really comfortable place for us to be in. Now it's not comfortable in the sense that, you know, you're standing on the shoulder of giants like that, and the first thing on your mind is, God, we can't fuck this up. Like, we've been given this golden ticket, and we have to make sure that we do it right, that we make a movie that we as fans of the franchise would want to see. But I think that, you know, thankfully within that franchise, you know, the kind of built into the DNA of what makes those movies great is that they really embrace risk taking. And you can tell that Kevin and Wes, with all of the Scream movies, were challenging themselves and challenging their own sensibilities. So while they're very much like of that, like of those filmmakers, there's also room in that franchise for someone else to come in and kind of, you know, make their mark, because the genre, the legacy by definition is something that kind of has to take risks and is like desperate to evolve. So it was, I mean, look, we still pinch ourselves every day, you know. It's a crazy privilege that we get to play in this world.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is truly mind blowing that we get to play in this world, and with Scream 5, I think, you know, there was a responsibility to the history of Scream, and I think now that was something that had to be very carefully executed, and I think now with Scream 6, we were able to put a little bit more of our stamp on it, and make more of an action horror movie, for lack of a better word, is kind of like what Scream 6 ends up being. And that was, but that's still within the Scream universe, right? Because like Tyler was saying, they do take chances, they do challenge themselves to go to another level, of both fun and entertainment and scares, you know. And again, you really have to hang it on the characters that got you there, and you know, the new characters that are in ours actually really, you know, carry that mantle and carry that torch well.
Yeah,
I think too, what's interesting about Scream, just to kind of add is,
Yeah,
and I think it's something that we kind of discovered, was that, you know, horror movie, and this goes for, I think, any genre. If you remove the genre element, right, the sort of thing that maybe gives it its hook or makes it really specific, what remains should still be interesting, right? The characters at the center of the story, if you remove the slasher villain chasing them around, should still be awesome. It should still be something that you want to watch, that you want to show up for. And
right,
that's something that we just always tried to achieve in our short films and in our early work. And with Scream, I mean, that's at the heart of it, right? Those Dewey, Gale, Sidney, like, those are iconic characters, and those movies ultimately have stood the test of time because you care about those characters. And so it was really satisfying to get to step into a franchise that, yeah, while it's certainly it has a lot of sparkle, and Ghostface is fucking awesome and really scary and really fun, none of it matters if you don't care about the characters, you know, that the story is, you know, sitting on the back of. And so it felt really great and really natural to jump into something that was so character first.
Yeah, and I think given all these things that you guys have talked about, you guys kind of ended up in, I feel like, a franchise that really lended itself to like letting new people kind of come in and play with it, especially when every movie kind of comments on the fact that it's like a sequel or a trilogy or a soft reboot or something. And so you guys kind of did that fun stuff in the fifth one, where it's like with the stab, I think it was Stab 7 in that movie, and Jack Quaid's character is like looking at the website and seeing all these forums and all these, you know, toxic fans or whatever on Reddit, basically like shit talking the reboot. And I think you guys were kind of able to like take that and like take what fans had said about stuff like the new Star Wars or, you know, whatever recent reboots there have been, and kind of just be like, we're going to do our own thing anyways. And so now Scream 6, which is coming out in just a week now. Is there anything you guys can kind of tell us about that hasn't maybe already been in the trailer and the clips? Nothing like huge, but just in terms of what the creative process for this new movie was, and kind of stepping away from, you know, the traditional suburban landscape of the Scream 5 and Scream 1.
Yeah, I mean, just to start, it's like this is going back to the whole process of making everything right. It's like we kind of got the band back together, so it was the exact same team that put together the last movie. So, screenwriters Jamie Vanderbilt, Guy Busick, producers William Sherritt, Paul Neinstein, Jamie, us, and we all approached it to be like we knew we had to top what came before, and we knew we had to go to a different place with this all. And the story, the script that Guy and Jamie wrote, like we did some deeper development on it at the beginning just to make sure that we were all thematically aligned with what we wanted these characters to go through. And then knowing that we had, at the heart of it, we had Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega to really hang the franchise on, and really explore their relationship as sisters and how they can grow within the franchise. So I think you kind of just went back to the well, and you're like, all right, let's battle test what we can do, and let's see how far we can push this, and then let's just make sure that our mystery is there, because like that's the one thing about Scream, right? It's not only a horror movie, but it's a murder mystery. So you have to have both elements, and you have to serve both elements of that in the story and in the script phase, and make sure that it really works. And you're like, because you're following these characters through this all, and you really want that whodunit element to make sure that really delivers. And then with this city being New York, I think what we say a lot is like it's easy to feel alone in the suburbs or in the middle of the woods, right? Like it's easy to just find space, but sometimes when you move to a new city, like a New York, you could be surrounded by millions of people and still feel alone. And I think that's what this movie does, especially well.
Yeah, and I would say that the assignment on the last Scream movie was, I think, to remind audiences and to why Scream should be back, right? Should exist in their lives, and to bring new audiences who maybe aren't familiar with the franchise into the fold. So in order to do that, I think that we had to lean pretty heavily on the nostalgia of what those movies are and what they kind of mean to people. And so, we say that Scream 5 is really sort of the greatest hits. It's very much an homage to Wes and to Kevin and the Easter eggs in that movie. It's we got Drew Barrymore to do some dialogue, and Matt Lillard, and of course Skeet came back. So I think we really wanted to let people know that the franchise was in good hands, and that we were really custodians of something that we love very dearly. And I think 6 is really a reaction to that. I think in every way, Scream 5 is nostalgic. Scream 6 is like a bit of a fuck you to all of that stuff. And
Right.
Which isn't to say that it's not like fully steeped in all of the fun Scream stuff, and it's very much like in the lineage of its predecessors. But I think that for us to get excited, we just had to do something wildly different. And the setting is a big part of that, of course, but I think it's also just there's a sort of punk rock ethos to the movie that feels really, really different. It feels like it's a little bit more down and dirty, and very much, I think, a reflection of us. Like it feels a little bit more like Ready or Not in a lot of respects, but while still very much being a Scream movie.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Everything I've seen from the trailers and the promo now, especially talking with you guys, I'm extremely excited to see how this turns out. I will definitely be seeing it, and I will be seeing it next week at the Monroeville Mall where they shot part of Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
Chad,
Yeah.
you've been there before. Before I kick it over to some students who had asked some questions, I had one more also pertaining to another franchise that I've heard you guys may or may not be working on from another horror director. Is there anything else you might be able to tell us about the Escape from New York project that I've heard that you guys might be working on?
Yeah.
Anybody have any
it's-
good pitches? Come on, pitch us some ideas.
No, I got nothing. If anyone else here has one, you come up here and
Yeah, no, it's really nice that they like thought of us for that. I think that it was a little bit more complicated than everybody going into it expected. Let's just say that that's a deeper development, and it has a long way to go before it's ready to be talked about or to be shared. But again, like to be able to do Wes Craven and then live in John Carpenter's world we're not looking to do any remakes or reboots. We're like looking to build on legacy. And I think that's kind of like, what can we add? What chapter can we add to that franchise is the way we will approach it. And we will always approach it that way. We're not going to try to invent a new Snake Plissken, but we want to live in that world and play in that sandbox. And again, it's going to be, it may come to fruition. It may all be for naught, but like, as horror movie nerds and genre nerds and fans of Carpenter, it's a blast to be in those conversations, and we'll see what we cook up or not. Or they might tell us to go away pretty quickly. We don't know, but that's just the way it goes.
Tyler, anything else from you, or was that about pretty much same thing Chad said?
No,
Perfect answer. It was a perfect answer. Yeah.
I think Chad nailed it. I'm sitting here thinking, God, we're masochists. Like stepping into Wes Craven's footprints and then into John Carpenter's, like we're just trying to fail at this point.
All right. Well, we're going to switch over now to some of our students who submitted a few questions for you guys and give them a chance to talk to you guys too. So
can you guys hear me okay on there?
Yeah.
Cool. Gabe, you were first. Hi, my name is Gabe. Nice to meet you guys.
Hi, Gabe.
So my question is so I'm trying to get started into the film industry, specifically as a production assistant. And I was wondering if you guys have any tips or tricks on starting out as a production assistant on a film set, such as Scream 6.
Yeah, my advice would be to start local. I know that there's probably a film commission, there are multiple film commissions there. I think that, productions, things very rarely shoot in their place of origin, right? We've been working in this business for 15 years, and outside of our short films have not shot a single thing in Los Angeles. A ton of stuff travels and shoots, I imagine, if not, in your near vicinity, then a few hours drive away. I would just go talk to a film commission and get a sense of what productions might be coming into the area, and see if you can interview for those office PA positions, set PA positions. It's the first thing we do when we go to a location. When we go to shoot something, we hire a great assistant. We hire a great production assistant. They're essential to the process. So if you're willing to work hard and learn a lot, then that's how I would get started.
Yeah, no, I would say start with the film commission. Also look, I think Nancy Mosser casting is still active in Pittsburgh. Like she's always on top of what's going on and where the new jobs will be. We do have friends who have shot in Pittsburgh as well. So we know people who have worked there at some of the stages, and you guys have done Mindhunter and Archive 81, and I believe a few other shows that have been shot there over the last 2 to 3 years. And it's all about starting somewhere, right? And just getting into it somehow. And I know there's a Northwestern Pennsylvania Film Commission too in Erie, and they're trying to draw more films there too. I have a budget for Pennsylvania for one of the other films that we're producing right now that I'm trying to get there, because it's my dream to be able to shoot back in Pittsburgh, because I just love the aesthetic of it, and it is truly unique. So I think it just keeping an ear out for what productions are coming to town and seeing who the local locations managers are. So you could be talking to them, because those are the people who are the pros about the town. So if you know who the location managers are, like just get in with them and say you'd be willing to PA for them or for any production that comes into the town. Find the local producers, find the local commercials that are being produced there. I know, like as an actor, I did a lot of work in Pittsburgh on commercials during my couple of years there. There's always something going on. There's always a way to find a way to do it, and in the meantime be making your own things, because I think that's always going to be helpful. And I see a few of you in the audience. I think get together with each other and make sure that you're helping each other on each other's projects, because that experience goes a long way, and you really learn how to be on a set and how to act on a set, and honestly how just to have fun and do your job, whatever that job is, at any level.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
We can read the questions, but yeah.
We'll open it up, and then if there's time left, go to Laura.
Hi, my name is Gigi. Thank you both so much for coming in and talking to us tonight. It's been really informative. I'm working on a project and I'm an inspiring actor, producer, director, and it's been really fun stepping not away from acting, but beyond acting and looking at the script and the story and producing. So I was wondering for both of you, what has been the most rewarding part of having a little bit more creative control over the stories that you can tell?
Good.
I mean, I think I it's I think it's I think it's everything. I think that and look, you always have to relinquish control, right? At some point, because it's a collaboration, I think that you have to learn how to play well with others, and you have to learn parts what parts of the idea can bend and what parts of the thing are non-negotiable to you. But I think, for us, so much of that comes down to what's in the script and really making sure that the script is as bulletproof of a blueprint for the thing you want to make as possible. And by the way, that's tone, that's the way that it sort of feels on the page. Like all of that stuff can be communicated in the writing, and I think it's valuable for it to be communicated in the writing. The better that you communicate that in the writing, the quicker you're going to get like-minded people on board with your idea, and the fewer battles you're going to fight about the things that you ultimately think are the most valuable. But I love hearing, by the way, that you're like a multi-hyphenate. I think that's something that we had really naturally, we sort of built into our process, that we were actors and writers and directors and cinematographers and editors and sound mixers, and every bit of each of those processes informed each other. And I think we are much more successful at our jobs because we understand how all of those different creative processes operate and serve the final product. So that's another thing. I think that this idea that you have to just do one thing or you have to just focus on one thing. Look, it's great to become an expert at a thing. I am not knocking that at all. But I think the more people can come up having touched every process, the better they are for the process, and the more rewarding the whole thing is. I think it's just such a crazy and insane endeavor making a movie. And if you can experience every corner of it, not only do you learn really quickly what you don't want to do and what you do want to do, but it just makes you a better leader and a more effective creator overall.
Yeah. I mean, I love that the synthesis of that is the way to get more control is to relinquish all control, right? And to always be a student, to always be learning, and to always be, trying new things and trying different things, but knowing what you like and what you love and what you want to bring to a project. I think the creative debate or the creative process is like the most fun we have while we're making things. Like, so everything is done before we even get to set. So when we get to set, we're executing, and then you're dealing with actors, and we're getting input from new environments, and everything like that too. So I think it's you have to be a little bit malleable in order to be in control, because if you're too rigid in terms of control, you're going to break pretty quickly. This process is a living, breathing art form, and there are a lot of intangibles that will come up, or things that will happen in the middle of a production that you might not be expecting, that you have to roll with, and you have to be able to roll with it in order to make the best project that possible, because it's not always going to be ideal. It's not always going to be beautiful. It's going to be like 17-hour days into nights, and you're like tired, and you're then the car doesn't work, or the window gets stuck, or Matt locks the keys in the car, which has happened before. So it's like you have to deal with all those. Yeah. So you have to be able to deal with all those things and then adapt either a scene or or just the process a little bit so you're able to get the best creative output. And that's kind of the fun, because those impurities are what makes it really special, and that's what makes it unique. Because again, it's never perfect and it never will be, but you still have to make it your own.
Yeah, I think just to sort of summarize that, I think that a lot of people are afraid of friction, right? That's the scary thing, like friction, conflict. Somebody saying, "I don't agree with you," like that doesn't always feel great. But this is something that we've learned, having beaten the egos out of each other for 15 years. That friction is actually a really essential part of the process. That people saying, "I disagree," or "I think we can do it better," that there's actually opportunity in that. It's not just something to be afraid of. It's, you don't have to put up a fight for everything. It's okay for a dialogue to exist in between those two spaces, and that's an important lesson to learn, because it's going to happen yeah, regardless of the scale of the project you're working on.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Nice to meet you both. My name's Luke. Chad, I know you spoke a little bit about it, like with comedy, and Ready or Not and Scream are, thriller horror movies, but they also implement comedy into it. So how do you do that balance where like one doesn't overtake the other one? It's not too funny, it takes away from the suspense, or like vice versa?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question, and I think it's a personal taste. Two, I think Matt, Tyler, and I are very adamant about never playing it for the joke, right? And I think what we do with those moments is we ground everything first and foremost through character, and we want our characters to be in the situation and to respond like a normal human would respond in those situations. I think one of my favorite moments is, I think, in Ready or Not, when the first, for those of you who haven't seen it, here's a little bit of a spoiler, but somebody explodes, and then one of the characters actually says, "What the fuck?" And I think that, like, we timed it so it was, the body would explode, and then you'd hear somebody in the audience say, "What the fuck?" And then the character would say, "What the fuck?" And then we're like, that's exactly what we want to go for. We want it to be grounded through character. And again, we've been doing that for a long time. I think all of the Chad, Matt, and Rob stuff that we did, all the early stuff we've done as Radio Silence, we've had not experts in insane situations. Like our segment for VHS was a group of dipshit friends went to a haunted house party, and went to like a costume party, and they went to the wrong address, and they ended up in the middle of an exorcism. So it's like that, those types of elements. What are those situations? What are those characters, and what are they going through? And then on top of that, what is coming into that world, and what is the extreme situation? Is it devil worshiping rich people, or is it like a mass serial killer? Like, those situations, you're going to react different to those. Some are going to be terrifying, and some are going to be kind of funny and make you laugh. But I think at the end of the day, it's all because you're living in this extreme tension, and it's really, really taut. And like, the more tense the situation is, any release you give at the end of that is going to be rewarded. If it's a splat or if it's a laugh, it's going to be a release of that tension. And I think you could just build on that, and then you let it snowball out of that.
Yeah, I also would say, and this is just kind of I think it's just a taste thing. Not knocking, the like more comedic horror comedies, but for us, the second it feels like a character is making a joke, it gets cut. And that is just very simply because we don't like the stuff that we make. And again, there are a million and one examples of movies. Shaun of the Dead is the first one that comes to mind, that is very aware of its sense of humor. But we just love it when it's the situation, the absurdity that's funny, and not necessarily a funny character. And that doesn't mean you don't have a character who just is the comedic relief and has a naturally comedic sensibility. Like that's really valuable, but they have to be grounded in the reality of the story in a way that doesn't feel like it's breaking beyond the guardrail that you've sort of set tonally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Um, my name's Nate. I'm a freshman here, and I just have kind of like less of a question about like the movies themselves, but more about during that like phase of your career where you were kind of just making indie films and just making stuff on your own. Like, how did you support yourselves during that time? And I mean, how did that make creating like difficult?
Very.
I mean, yeah, it was really hard because we all had
Yeah.
jobs, on top of that. So it was like, Matt and Tyler were working as office assistants. I was bartending and, doing that type of thing. And we'd get up, we'd get together and work from 9 to 5 when we could. And then we'd go work from 6 to 11, and either flipping the creative and the work to whichever times those were. But it would just be a nonstop pursuit of creating, and then making sure we would have enough resources for a weekend shoot or anything like that. And we'd always pay people with like Little Caesars pizza and Diet Dr. Peppers, and now we have to pay them a little bit more to help us on our movies. But always just like making sure everybody was involved, everybody was having a good time, everybody was engaged, and everybody was in it for the right reasons. I think was a big part of that. It was building that camaraderie and that desire to be making things. I think is hard. The struggle is real. It's no joke. It's really hard to break into the business and to be able to do it every day. And not have to worry about like where rent is going to come from. It took us years and years to get there. But it was just something. It was always the goal. It was always the end game. I'm not, and we. That said, we're nowhere very fortunate to be where we are right now. And honestly, we do treat every day like it's our first. I think that was a Biggie line too. But like, you always are happy.
Steal from the best.
What I know. Let's just steal from Biggie. And then you just treat every day like it's your first, and keep hustling and keep at it and keep doing what you do. And that rings true. Yeah.
I would just say too, if you can pay the bills doing something that is adjacent to the vocation that you want to be in, then aim for that. I was very fortunate to be making my rent as a camera operator and as a DP on on TV shows, and with the Upright Citizens Brigade. That was kind of how I was making ends meet. And it was while I knew there were kind of bigger things and bigger ambitions, I was also really actively creating and at my job, and felt like I was really engaged and really learning how to be a better storyteller. And that, by the way, I think that can go for a bartending job. I mean, I have a friend who's one of the most talented writers I know, is still a bartender, and he kind of refuses to just be a writer because that bartending job puts him in touch with some of the weirdest, wackiest people and stories that you could ever hope to write. And so I think it's a little bit just focusing the kind of prism of your life through what you ultimately want to do. And but I think if you can find a way to work as a PA, as an assistant editor, as an editor, as a script supervisor, there are an infinite number of jobs that are if not exactly what you want to do, then within arm's reach of what you ultimately want to do. And there's something that feels really gratifying about making ends meet in proximity to the process. There's something that's it allows you to be a sponge for information.
Yeah, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyways. I mean, we weren't always the best employees. I know Matt worked as an office manager at New Line, and all of our early work we did it in the office setting because Matt had the keys to the building, so we would sneak in on the weekend when no one was there, and we would use that so we could actually have production value for our shorts because we're all like living in shitty little apartments. So it was like we used those types of resources to be able, and then we ended up going outside and using the rest of California as natural production value. But it's like using, using what you have access to and just making the time available almost every day to feed that creative need as well.
Yeah, and I think you'd sort of mentioned it, Chad, but I think as much as you can design the process to not feel like work, because
Right.
at some point in your life you're going to be balancing those things, and it's a lot harder to leave your day job and go do the filmmaking thing if the filmmaking thing feels like work. And for us, it was always like hanging out with buddies. It was just an opportunity to like drink beers and shoot stuff and drive around California and piss each other off and make each other laugh. And so it was weirdly more recreational than anything else. And I think if you can build some sense of that, it'll never feel like you're working. It'll feel like the reward at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my name's Dominic.
Hey, Dominic.
I'm just wondering, it's a little bit of a lighter question, but what's your guys' favorite horror thriller movies, like growing up or now? And are there elements or scenes from those movies that you tried to pay homage to in your own films?
I mean, yeah, man, all of them. Everything is just is another step on a path that we've loved. I mean, it's borrow from the best. I think it's the best advice we could ever give. I don't think anything we've made isn't in some way, shape, or form, paying homage to the things that we love. I grew up on, the movies that sort of really informed me. The first VHS I ever owned was Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I love that. I just love that movie unabashedly. But yeah, Alien, the Terminator movies, Predator, like those sort of sci-fi, action, horror, the mix of genres were really a huge thing for me. But also the big action adventure stuff. As Chad had said, that was our origin, was telling big kind of Amblin-esque, action adventure stuff on a budget. And so, Indiana Jones, E.T., like all of that stuff is very much in our creative DNA. And I think that's sort of maybe stating the obvious, because I think a lot of those movies are the business, the foundation of what filmmaking was kind of built on those things. But yeah, all of that work was just wildly influential.
Yeah, no, and obviously I think a lot of ours overlap, and then there's also like movies like Terminator and Terminator 2 and Alien and Aliens and Back to the Future and Hudsucker Proxy and Fargo and Raising Arizona, like Coen brother movies too, were a big part of what I really got into when I was younger, and just because of the way they were able to make these incredibly quirky characters feel so real and put them in these like crazy situations. I think that's always like the fun, right? Like you want to be able to find the characters you can relate to or you aspire to be, and go from that, And then just going back to more favorite movies, it's like obviously the Nightmare on Elm Street, the Wes Craven movies, and the original Scream. To be honest, that kind of changed the entire world, for me when I saw it the first time, and then had it on continuous play as I got older, more or less. But yeah, it's good to be a fan of movies.
Thank you.
Like one or two more questions if anyone has anything else to ask.
I think we got time for one more. Yeah.
Can I ask you guys a question real quick? Like, what is this like a class? Is this a class, or is this just a group of people interested in filmmaking?
We have our president with the mic right now, so if you'd like, Aditi, you can take it away.
Hi guys.
Hi.
I'm Aditi. So this is actually a club on Pitt's campus. We're called Scene, and basically our mission is to like bring people interested in film and acting together, bring in speakers like yourselves. So we really appreciate you being here today, and basically just like providing as many opportunities that we might not get inside the classroom and bringing them like outside of the classroom. We share casting calls, crew calls, different events, bringing different speakers. So yeah, I mean,
Awesome.
That's what we are. It's really
that's
great.
amazing. My timing was impeccable for that one, that you got the mic right when I asked that. That's wow.
Yeah,
Pleasant stage.
so we just want to keep this club has kind of like disbanded at Pitt through the years. It's been around since like 2000, but it's had its ups and downs. So we really rebranded this year and really want to make it something that's long lasting, which has been a very fun journey. I guess I can wrap it up if no one else has any questions, but I wanted to know, in as directors, other than, because I'm not a very like, I don't like editing. I love like sitting and watching someone edit and telling them where like they should make the cut, but I don't have the physical patience for editing, but I love directing. So I guess like in those cases when I'm not as technically savvy, like physically with my hands, what are some ways to still improve as a director and improve in that technical filmmaking aspect? Because I feel like I have a very strong grasp of character, but in the technical aspects, I always feel like I can be improving.
Yeah, I mean, I think just watching as much as you can and watching the things that you love and trying to understand why those things make you feel the way you feel, because it's not accidental, right? I think that's one of the things you learn really quickly, and especially when you're answering something on a larger, working on a larger scale. You really have to have control of the tools that you're using in order to get a certain response. And so I would just say to continue to watch the things you love and rewatch the things you love, and understand why a cutting pattern works the way that it works, and why the music coming in at that moment instead of some other moment works the way that it works. Like, there are so many things and so many choices that go into creating an emotional response. And I think there is, while a lot of that is feel, right? A lot of that is just intuition and knowing something innately, which is, I think, just a gift, right? That we sort of have. A lot of it is also stuff that you can learn, that you can practice, that you can kind of decode. There's sort of an equation to a great scene. We know a scene is working when you drop a song in and like the song is like hitting the cutting pattern. You're like, how is that even possible, right? There are just certain ways of approaching those things technically that can actually be learned on a really specific level. So that would be my advice. But by the way, I think it's also okay to just feel things. It's okay for things to. We talk a lot about how things can feel technically right, and you can get into a conversation with an editor or a director of photography where they'll go, no, this is how it's supposed to be because of logic and reason. And you can say, but it doesn't feel right. And the feel is the thing that you should always steer towards. Obviously, there are certain rules that you shouldn't break, all kinds of, you don't want to confuse your audience, but the feeling is what we ultimately go to watch movies for. There are a lot of really technically proficient films that you feel nothing during. I'm looking at you, Tenet. Sorry if you guys are Tenet fans, but I think for us, and this is, I think, just a maybe a little bit of just a taste thing. Feeling is the point. We want people to feel something. That is what the currency of the movies we want to make are dealing in.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I know that is it almost 9? It is 9 on the dot. Thank you so much for being here. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you all. It's so great to meet
Thank you all so much.
Great questions.
Yeah,
Great questions.
Great.
And thanks,
Very
Max,
good
for
questions.
like connecting us. And this has been really amazing. We're gonna ask if it's okay with you guys, if you guys want to, if we can all get a picture with you. We'll just have everyone come to the front and I can click it. Cool.
Definitely.
That'd be great.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, of course.
So everyone come up here.
All right, what's the best way?
Feel free.
Hey, maybe you should go around the
Maybe
other side.
Yeah.
Max, make sure you send us this picture too, because
Yeah, I will.
right.
I'll email it to you and or send a fleck.
That's good. Yeah, great.
Everyone gonna get in? Awesome. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Hey, see you guys. Thank you again. See ya.
See you, dude. All right. Have fun. Bye.
Hey, see ya. Bye.